Together, I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop bullying. Save the children.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Well, it's another Saturday, and we are grateful to be with you wherever you're watching us or listening to us. I'm Reverend William Hall. I'm the pastor of St. James Community Church, and I want to say to Reverend Jackson, as I always do, thank you for making space for a young man like myself. And as a son of Push and a participant in the movement, I'm grateful to be with you wherever you are. Today, we want to pause and stop and talk about something very serious.
Never would I have imagined that I would be standing up here talking about the execution of my son by the Minneapolis Police Department.
A mere lock. Minnesota was ground zero for George Floyd. We saw the world stand still as we anticipated and listened to what the verdict would be in that trial. But now we have witnessed again a young, innocent black man shot down with a no-knock warrant. What that essentially means is that a police officer can come into your house with not announcing themselves, kick in the door, and do whatever is necessary to apprehend you. These officers came into this man's home. He was asleep on the couch, no announcement, and literally startled but got killed. He did nothing illegal. He was not even the intended target of the investigation. No-knock warrants have attributed to over 80 people killed and over 13 officers killed as well since 2010, according to the New York Times. No-knock warrants are dangerous. As we see, it has cost another innocent black man their life. We're heading to Minnesota because the push is on and we got some work to do. Today, in our moment of Black history, we want to share with you something that is unique and special in this moment. The 6888, 6888. Patan was the only all-woman African-American woman at that literally was a part of World War II. I want you to stay tuned so that you can enjoy this moment in Black history.
You know about World War II, those who fought against Hitler and his Axis alliance.
Hey, we got a job. Let's get this done.
But you've probably never heard of a battalion of black women raising the morale of millions of servicemen overseas. It was just after D-Day in 1944, Allied troops were rapidly moving through Europe, and millions of pieces of undelivered mail for America's armed forces were piling up. Retired Major Fanny Griffin McClendon of the Women's Army Corps, now 101 years old, was a supervisor in the 6888th Central Postal Directory Battalion, a group made up of all black women and credited with clearing a 2-year backlog of letters and packages from family members back home.
They prevailed where others failed. They were not the first.
Retired Colonel Edna Cummings, an advocate for this largely unrecognized group, says the 6888, as they were called, comprised the only black members of the Women's Army Corps to deploy to Europe during World War II.
The Army thought it would take 6 months to clear the backlog just in Birmingham, England, but they reduced the backlog in 3 months.
Then returning home with no fanfare.
It never occurred to me that anybody would be standing outside of Fort Dix and waving and say, hey, they're home, or whatever.
They never got a parade. They never got a salute.
Brenda Partridge Brown says she never knew her mother, Willie Bell Irvin Partridge, was part of the battalion until a simple Google search nearly 20 years after her mother's death.
I can't explain to you what I felt that day. My heart almost stopped.
Only 6 of the original 855 are believed to still be alive, and now the battalion is close to getting the recognition many say is long overdue.
It just means the world to me to know that my mother's service was not in vain.
It never occurred to me that we would even be considered for a medal of any kind.
Well, everybody, listen. the Saturday Forum, there's a lot of ground to cover today. Bishop Tavis Grant, Reverend Dr. Attorney Jeanette Wilson, Due Process with Dr. Todd Yeary. And don't forget the Push Now moment with number 83 for the Chicago Bears, David Terrell. And so listen, before we go for it, let's check in. I want to know wherever you're watching us from. If you're in Chicago, tell us what side of the city you're on. Type it. Go ahead. Type. And secondly, I want you to share this. You never know who might need some insight, some information, and some inspiration. And last but not least, if you have not already, we want you to subscribe to YouTube. Yeah, Rainbow Push is on YouTube. It's a lot of content that you can connect with throughout the week until we gather again on Saturday morning. So stay tuned, tell somebody, text somebody, let them know that the push is on, because we got some work to do.
Greetings, friends. This is Dr. Joseph Bryant Jr., the Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Silicon Valley, Bay Area, under the leadership of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. We are so privileged and honored to serve Reverend Jackson and the great vision that he has provided for Silicon Valley, as well as all of our national work around this country and yet around the globe. And so we're grateful for this Black History Month. We celebrate the history of our people and the struggles therein, and yet we also carry the banner of our responsibilities to lift up one another. Even throughout this past 2 years now of the pandemic, our Rainbow Push regional office here in the Bay Area, we continue to provide meals and food to those in need, particularly our seniors and our shut-ins. And now every other Saturday, we provide boxes of groceries for households throughout this area. We're able to provide fresh produce and fruits and vegetables and canned goods. We're able to provide them with meats and proteins, and we're able to give an entire box to an entire family each and every Saturday as we are ministering in this way. We are doing as Jesus instructed us. We are feeding those that are hungry. And so we're grateful for that privilege under the banner of this Food Justice Initiative launched by Reverend Jackson and continuing here in partnership with the San Francisco Faith-Based Coalition. We are also grateful for the opportunity to provide right here on this campus the opportunity for children to receive their tests for COVID. We know that children are back in school, and so many families are concerned. And so we offer free tests twice a week, every Wednesday and Friday, right here at our community hub. We offer free testing for children and for their parents to test for COVID, the rapid test. So they're able to find out within 15 minutes their condition, if they've been exposed to other students in their classrooms, or if they've been exposed to other people in the community. We're able to provide rapid tests right here on our campus to make sure that those students continue to stay safe. And so we're grateful for that privilege. A lot going on in the world of sports. I thank God for the privilege of serving also as the National Sports Director under Reverend Jackson. And because of that, this past week, as you all know, we're in the middle of Super Bowl week. And so we were able to spend some time with the Fritz Pollard Alliance, along with Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, to try to talk a little bit about what's happening with the lawsuit, as well as more so with the reality of the lack of diversity in the coaching ranks in the NFL. We have to get a huge amount of credibility and appreciation to the Fritz Pollard Alliance for their work in promoting, pushing, and ensuring that the Rooney Rule is in place. However, the conversations with Mr. Goodell's office and others is that that's not enough anymore, because there's so many that are circumventing the system, just checking off boxes and truly not embracing diversity in an authentic way. And so we've had some great conversations where we will continue, along with Dr. Richard Lapchick and other leaders in the areas of diversity in sports, as Reverend Jackson continues to make sure he changes the climate of sports, both on and off the field of play. As a matter of fact, as we go to Cleveland for the NBA All-Star Weekend, we're grateful that the NBA continues to honor, recognize, and appreciate the way Reverend Jackson has impacted the sports world for nearly 50 years. Many of you may not be aware that Reverend Jackson was an advisor to many of those athletes that worked tirelessly in the earliest of days, the Jim Browns and Lou Alcindor, who later became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and they were a part of a movement that Reverend Jackson was igniting among players, Muhammad Ali and others. As a matter of fact, many people we really thank God for Reverend Jackson's impact on even the Rooney family to enact the Rooney Rule because of his work. So Reverend Jackson's place in sports is second to none. And so we thank the NBA for always acknowledging and appreciating him and for all that he does in the sports realm. We truly can pause and acknowledge and give kudos to Reverend Jackson. Likewise, our work here in Silicon Valley continues as we engage with our partners, these wonderful technology programs and partners, companies and agencies. We want to give a special shout out to what used to be Facebook, is now Meta. And we launched last year a wonderful engagement with Meta called Elevate, which is a digital certification program. And in this program, we're able to provide scholarships to students who are looking to go into digital marketing. And thank you to Facebook/Meta for providing us 1,000 scholarships that we're able to provide to Black and brown students, college age, as well as those that are job seekers that can go through this training that has been shaped by our office, by our amazing Elevate team. And now we're able to provide this training for those that are interested in. So we're going to show you a little clip, a little caption about Elevate and show you how you can engage in our upcoming cohort. We just finished one in January. Our next will be in March. We invite you, if you are interested in going into marketing and digital sales and digital development of any kind, anything to do with how the internet is utilized to help Black and brown businesses to spread their wings, to engage their platform, to improve their visibility, you want to be a part of Elevate. So here's a quick little spot to give you some background as well as some information on how you can engage with our upcoming cohort. But continue to look up, continue to keep hope alive, continue to be your best in the midst of it all, because we recognize that it may be dark, but the morning shall come. Check this out from Meta, the Elevate program in partnership with our Silicon Valley office, and we'll see you real soon. Peace.
Rainbow Push Silicon Valley's Push Tech has partnered with Facebook to bring you Elevate, an industry-recognized digital marketing certification. This enables you to market and manage Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Plus, you get access to a private job board hosted by Facebook and a network support group made up of Facebook employees and thousands of marketers, giving you direct access to industry and platform experts. Our Push Tech team walks you through the process of becoming certified from start to finish, because your success is our mission. Don't wait, now's the time. Start or boost your career and your future. Amplify your voice as a creator and earn money for doing what you love. Organizations, we want to partner with you and bring this opportunity to your community. So come visit us online at rainbowpushsv.org. Classes start in March. Let us elevate your future.
Welcome to Spotlight on Education. I know you're wondering what we're going to talk about this week. I know you've heard about it. Should the children wear masks in school or should they not wear masks? Who's in charge? Who makes the decision? Well, I have Dr. Whitaker here. You know, she is our National Policy Director for Education, but she's also working in a school system in Illinois. You know, a downstate judge in Sangamon County just issued a temporary restraining order. What was that about, Dr. Whitaker?
You know, thank you again for the opportunity to share what is happening, not just in our state, but nationwide. But in our state in particular, as you shared, on February the 4th, the judge issued a restraining order on several school districts impacting hundreds of students in the state of Illinois, prohibiting mask requirements for students, again, in numerous districts across our state. More specifically, I think it's important to share that the ruling temporarily restrained school districts from requiring masks for students and teachers unless a quarantine order is issued by the local health department. It's also important to share that furthermore, under the terms of the order, Reverend Jeanette, school districts can't refuse admittance to teachers and students deemed close contact of a probable case of COVID-19.
See, this is a big problem. You know why this case came about? Well, some parents filed a lawsuit against the governor, Governor Pritzker, as you know, the governor of Illinois, who had issued a mask mandate for all school children. Every child that would attend public school from kindergarten or preschool through 12th grade would be required to wear a mask while in class, while in the building. Parents and teachers or anyone who entered the building would have to wear a mask. Well, what's happening in your school?
Well, let me add, before I respond directly to that, we have mass confusion occurring in the state of Illinois.
Mass confusion, M-A-S-K confusion.
That's right. Mass confusion, and it's centered around school district officials' interpretation of the restraining order. Some school district officials are suggesting, via the advice of their school board attorneys, that unless your school district was specifically named in the restraining order, then we are required to ensure that students wear masks. But other school district officials' interpretation of that is, regardless of whether or not your school district was named in the restraining order or the lawsuit in particular, you have to provide students the opportunity to remove
wherever
those masks.
you are, there's a mask mandate that is being challenged by local school boards. These are, in many states, they're elected. In Illinois, we have some elected school board managers, and we have, in Chicago, it's appointed, the school board is appointed by the mayor. So now you have all these different sub-jurisdictions making decisions about your child. What do you think? Do you think that school boards or local school districts should be able to make the decision, or is it the governor's response? That's the whole issue. Does the governor have the authority to issue a mask mandate for health reasons? If the governor doesn't, then who does?
You know, I think that's a very important point that you raised. In my school district, we've elected to, because we are not named in the lawsuit, we have elected to maintain our position that is important for our students and our staff to remain masked. But in just school districts many blocks away, the opposite has occurred. You know, Reverend Jeanette, when I thought about this topic in particular, I was reminded about how often we heard at the beginning of this international pandemic crisis about the disproportionate effect that the pandemic crisis has had on Black and African Americans in particular. And so when I think about an issue or a lawsuit that would suggest that students don't have to wear masks, I can't help but to reflect on what population of students and their families are most negatively impacted by the removing of the masks. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's going to be children of color, poor children of any race, because the parents really don't have access to health authorities to give them advice. Most of them don't have pediatricians for their children who would indicate whether the child should be vaccinated, whether the child should wear a mask if or if not vaccinated. They don't have competent people with them who can assess the health risk of not wearing a mask. I just think it's a dangerous precedent to set, to allow individual school districts to make that decision in a state. And this is happening, not just in Illinois, it's happening all around America. I saw the head of the American Federation of Teachers on the news this morning, and she was saying it should be based on some health assessments. And I would assume that the governor is not making a political decision. He's making a health decision based on recommendations from the head of the Illinois Department of Public Health.
I would have a tendency to agree with you on that, relevant to our governor's position on this. And yet I can't help but to be reminded of politics and education once again. You know, teachers say to me all the time, Doc, I have no interest in politics. They're trying to teach students so that students are successful in school and ultimately in life. They have no interest in politics. And yet I also remind educators and teachers in particular that you have to be aware of those things, those policies, those legal actions that are being taken that impact your work.
Everything is political. You and I were born, the first political issue was your birth certificate. Your last political issue is your death certificate. It's all political. And so don't act like politics doesn't matter, and the states' rights agenda that keeps saying local people should make the decisions. Well, in a pandemic, a local decision could be catastrophic because the disease spreads without regard to geographic boundaries. We know that with COVID. Right. It has nothing to do with well, you live in the state of Illinois, but you're in a school district up north. It spreads all over the globe. So I don't know. Call us. Let us know what you think.
I think now would be a really good opportunity to engage students in the conversation. The direct question that has been posed to me very often when I interact with my educator audience is, do we believe that Black students need access to Black teachers? What's your thought about that?
The teachers that a student has from kindergarten or preschool all the way through high school matters. So many young African American males are living with single parent females. So when they attend an elementary school where there's no male teacher in the building, that's a problem because they have not interacted with a male leader, teacher from kindergarten or from birth all the way through high school. And that makes a difference in the life of a student. At least there needs to be a balance.
I agree with that.
I don't think every teacher has to be African American, but it makes a difference for our children to be able to look at that.
I would add on to that the phrase, you cannot be what you cannot see. And so the reality is that, yes, African American students need exposure to Black male and female teachers. However, the caveat is that they need exposure to culturally responsive teachers. So I don't think, a lot of times when I'm having this conversation, I'll say most of my audience is actually white female teachers. And they've said, Doc, we actually are not okay always. And this is real talk. They say, Doc, we're not always okay when we attend national conferences or when we're at a workshop that is focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because very often the lead speaker says that we don't matter. This is what they're saying to me, Reverend Jeanette. And so what my response nationally and internationally to that is, I want all teachers to recognize, even white teachers, that again, Black students cannot be what they do not see. But that doesn't mean that a white teacher can't be an effective teacher of Black students as long as he or she is intentional in their efforts to incorporate knowledge of culture into instruction, and as long as he or she is intentional as it relates to exposing Black students to people that look like them.
Well, the other thing is, what percentage of African American teachers are teaching in all white environments? You've had the opportunity to teach and be an administrator in a majority white environment.
Correct.
That's very rare.
That is rare.
They don't, when Brown versus Board of Education was decided, it wasn't just to integrate students, it was to integrate cultures, integrate resources. And what we didn't do was integrate African American instruction into predominantly white instructors.
Right, and I'm reminded when you say that of the fact that even white students need access to Black teachers.
All students do, because as we blend the cultures, as we shape America as what it really is, it's important that we're inclusive, not only of African Americans, but also Asian Americans, also a Native American culture, also Latino Americans. We have to include all of that in our instruction, as well as various immigrant populations that are in our country. I come from Haiti or the Caribbean or Africa, the continent of Africa. The teachers need to understand my culture and be able to study it, and also somebody in the building should reflect it. Does it mean every classroom? No. But it is something wrong with a school system, an elementary and secondary school system that has all or majority white teachers and no, or very few, less than 10% African American.
Well, and that leads to my closing remarks about that, and that is, how do you go and gain access to African American teacher candidates? Mm-hmm. And it's important to recognize that it has been my observation, and I have a lot of experience, it has been my observation that school district officials historically have attempted to go to schools where a majority of the students enrolled in the education program are actually white. So if you go and attempt as a school district and you say you have a policy that would suggest that you want the teaching staff to reflect the diversity in your school district, and you go and recruit teachers at historically white colleges and universities, that's what you're going to get. So what I'm encouraging moving forward toward recommendations is that we take advantage of historically Black college and university education departments. And I would recommend that school boards and school district officials write policies and implement policies that would suggest that you will go and recruit at the historical colleges and universities that I spoke about in an attempt to practice what I call the policy of intentionality, in an attempt to intentionally implement a policy that would suggest your intent to have a more diversified working staff.
This spotlight for education, we don't have any more time because our producers limit us. So if you want to see more of the education, spotlight on education, why don't you call us 773-FREEDOM, 773-FREEDOM, 373-3366.
Push Excel's goal is to inspire students to strive for excellence in education in spite of personal, family, and community challenges that they might experience. How do we do this? By advocating for educational policies that guarantee equal funding for all students without regard to race or economic standing. By engaging parents, students, and teachers in pursuing high-quality education and striving for educational excellence at every level. And by forging partnerships with community-based and public sector stakeholders in education. Now, Push Excel is a national model program with the purpose of connecting principals, parents, popular personalities, and students in a bond and to support students at every level on the educational ladder. Now, we want you to become a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition and Push Excel. Your annual membership can help us to change policies that impact students, colleges, and universities all around the country. So step up and sign up today. Membership is only $35, and if you're a student or a senior, $15. Just go to our website, rainbowpush.org, and push join to become a member or push donate to support the Push Excel program. You can also text the word Push Excel, that's PUSHEXCEL, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give us any amount that you feel comfortable giving or call us at 773-256-2775. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you. And remember to keep hope alive.
Every week, you all, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson makes room for young people. He gives us voice, gives us platform, and we're grateful for the Push Now moment. It's designed, this moment is for those that are now in the movement, generations later, but we honor and we respect the legacy from which you come from. And so today I have with me as my special guest, David Terrell, number 83 Chicago Bears, number 1 at the University of Michigan, but he comes to us from Richmond, Virginia. So welcome, David Terrell. How you doing, man? Just first thing first, how are you doing? Having left the league now, doing what you're doing now as just a retired football. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
Well, let's jump into it, man. How did you get into football? Out of all the sports you could have played in Richmond, Virginia, why football?
I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, Gilpin Court projects. So my mom pushed me right outside. I had a court right out back of my building, field right in the back of my building, baseball diamond in the back of my building. My mom was always preaching, get out the house. I had to get out the house, had to do my work. So she was the sponsor to that.
So mom pushed you out, said get out, enjoy the air, be a kid. You get into football. What was it like playing football in Richmond, Virginia?
Football in Richmond, Virginia, it was what it was. You know, I went to a great high school, black high school. You know, we played the white schools. It was what it was. You know, I got called a nigga, spit on, did all that, got kicked out of games.
Wow.
Played the black schools. It was, you know, very competitive.
Right,
the white
right.
schools was competitive as well, but it was. I grew up in Virginia, rattlesnake, flag, Confederate flag when I grew up.
Wow. So,
and it's still there too.
Wow. So here it is, you coming out of Richmond, Virginia, against all odds, number one. Number two, you're facing the mountain of racism in your face, spit upon, called one of the most atrocious words in the vernacular, and yet you make it to the University of Michigan on a scholarship. Wow. Tell us, what was it like going through the hallways of the University of Michigan, coming from Virginia? What was that experience like?
It was grand, to be honest with you.
You played at the big house.
The big house, to be in a position to wear the #1 jersey, to go to school, see what college atmosphere is really like, to understand it, to get it digested in you firsthand.
Wow.
It was beautiful for me.
You made history at the University of Michigan. They go to the Orange Bowl. What role did you play in that game with some little quarterback named Tom Brady? I think we heard of him, but what happened when you went to that bowl game, man?
That was Tom Brady's last game. I was MVP, but Tom's MVP too, so that's my guy.
So I mean, we hear about Tom Brady, but David Terrell, y'all co-MVPs of the Orange Bowl. Did you catch a touchdown in that game?
I caught 3, I think, if I'm not mistaken. That was so long ago.
But the point of the matter is, you scored in that game, then you get to the league. First round, the Chicago Bears. But let's get down to the get-down. National Football League right now, over 70% of the players are black, but yet we don't even have a handful. We don't even have 5 head coaches. Multi-billion-dollar sports enterprise, little to no diversity, equity, inclusion, making the playing field even. What was it like going into that tunnel every week, and once the game was over, knowing that you was one of many, but not really one?
I mean, if you generalize it like that, it sounds like modern day slavery, but to the sense of what you're saying, it's ownership. You know, in anything like that, a business of the NFL, it's a business. So you look at ownership. You don't look at coaches, you look at ownership. So what's the ownership dynamic?
Wow.
And who is controlling? And how are they controlling? And why are they controlling the way they're controlling? So, I mean, the NFL is the #1 most profitable business in the world. I mean, in the world. When you compare owners, what they getting paid, and the profit of the league in itself. It's the #1 profit business in the world.
Wow.
Not talking about Apple, Google, all of the oil money. We talking about 13 owners that makes an awful lot of money every year consistently. To the point where Roger Goodell makes to the demands of $20 to $50 million a year. So
$20 to $50 million a year.
That's paid to him by the owners.
So in 5 years, Goodell has touched $250 million.
Or maybe more.
Wow. But every single week, though, you line up on the line of scrimmage, getting your head knocked in, all types of brutality to your body, and when it's over, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what's going on right now. You talk about coaches, then you look at the players. So they just did a concussion lawsuit where they deemed that the black players were, I don't even know how they worded it. I just say it in layman's terms. It said black players are dumb, white players are smarter. So they gave the concussion money to the white players and said that the black players were already dumb. So when they came in the league, it was like you came in dumb, you left dumb. So when they test you out for the concussion lawsuit money, they saying we testing these black players and all of them are already stupid.
So odds already stacked against you. First of all, being a black man in America. Second of all, being a black NFL player. But then you leave Chicago, go to New England, then you end up in Denver. The year that President Obama.
You know, for me, that was an awesome year for me to go back. I can reflect on it. I wrote notes about it and stuff like that to remember those moments. So I reread a couple of them. I was a cheap surrogate, cheap way to say, you know, you were on the staff. But for me, during that time, I was somewhat dating a Destiny Child girl, Michelle Williams, which I was. I had likes of people like Jay-Z I could get in hold of. Obama was going to put his name in. He put his name in. He was running. I was on the Broncos. I threw his first kicker at the Air Force Base in Denver.
So when you say kicker, you threw a fundraiser, like, you know, get people out to vote, get people behind them.
Yeah,
so you threw it in Denver.
It was more than just a little kicker.
Oh, no, I mean, I know. You feel me?
Yeah, but this is the funny thing about it. I had likes of, like, I played with Champ Bailey. I played with John Lynch, who's the president, general manager of the 49ers. I played with Al Wilson. You know, I played with Gerard Warren. These are friends. The Boyens owned the Broncos during that time. Now, I had a company called Free Mind during this time. It was basically a t-shirt company. I was just promoting Obama with t-shirts.
Right.
I had everybody scheduled to come to the event. And
everybody
on my team.
Right, okay.
We had 10,000 people that showed up to the Air Force Base. Everybody showed. That nobody on my team showed up. You know, nobody.
So let's run this back.
Management. I put slips in management office boxes.
Right.
I put T-shirts in everybody's boxes. So if we had 250 people that was in the building is where we go practice at. It's two parts of the building. You have the work part where you got daily work,
office, admin, right?
And then we have player
facility
and coaches.
Right.
So it's two mailboxes. You got a mailbox of your staff. You got a mailbox of us. I put T-shirts and everybody marches and come on to the event. You're welcome. I bought tickets for everybody.
So so here it is. You are expressing your right as a citizen to, you know, support President Obama, candidate Obama at that time, and it didn't go well. You said nobody from the team showed up. Nobody.
It went well for me.
Right.
Because I showed up. I had two other teammates, but they were just like practice squad players.
Out of 250, only 2 showed up from the Denver Broncos.
2, but at the same time.
Wow.
You know, it was when I showed up and my team didn't show up, I was like, dang. But then I showed up, I saw so many people in there. It kind of overwhelmed me to the point where, and Obama stopped it. It gave me my thanks. Michelle gave me a kiss on the cheek. Everybody clapped for me and everything.
But what was the ripple effect of that? Here it is, you saying support the first black president of the United States.
That's running.
What was the ripple effect though? What was the locker room like? What was it like back at the facility?
When I went back, I'm not gonna say names, but I had personal players, friends of mine was like, Dad, you about to lose your job.
Wow.
And I lost my job.
Arguably, it can say.
I mean, they can say, look.
It could be other things, but at the end of the day, you step out and say, hey, support this black candidate, and then next thing you know, you getting the slip saying, thank you for your services, we don't need you.
And then the next week, which I wasn't there, you know, after the kicker, I wasn't there because I got released.
Right.
You know what I mean? Pink slip in my locker. The T-shirts what hurt me most was I made T-shirts. I put Obama face with a cartoon, not a cartoon, but like color. And they took the actual T-shirt that was made and they printed out their own T-shirts, gave them to the staff, and they had a circle around it with Obama face crossed off.
So at the end of the day, as we prepare to go forward in our Saturday forum, you're talking to a man who played all the way through adversity from high school, got into the NFL, wanted to express his support for the first black president of the United States, and subsequently gets released. And so when we talk about this idea and this issue of what's going on in the NFL right now, exclusion, no diversity, it's evident, numbers don't lie. Here's someone right here that you can honestly understand a different perspective so that you can make the right perspective. And so David Terrell, I appreciate you, number one, for sharing your time with us today. Number two, standing up for what you felt was the right thing. And then number three, thank you for all that you're still doing in the community. And I mean, Destiny Child, Michelle Williams to Jay-Z, but whoever thought that a young man from Richmond, Virginia, the projects will make a big difference. And your work in Denver, your work in Chicago, your work in Richmond to this day is still making a difference. And you still are making touchdowns, in my opinion, and in the opinion of those who are watching, man. So thank you so much. Everybody stay tuned because the push is on. I told you we got some work to do.
This is Bishop Tavis Grant, the National Field Director for the Rainbow Push Coalition, and this is Action on the Field. We are so excited about your partnership and participation in what we're doing, and you can tell, text, and tag others. Go to us on any of our social media platforms and don't just join, but get in the fastest growing social justice army in America. You know, we've been fighting for justice as it relates to the case, the murder of Laquan McDonald, and we're continuing that and partnering with any number of social activists and community-based organizations here regionally and nationally call for a federal investigation into the death of Laquan McDonald. Our prayers and thoughts are with the family of Amir Locke, young African-American male who was killed in Minneapolis, very much so like Breonna Taylor, by way of the execution of a no-knock warrant. We want to commend the mayor of Minneapolis for joining Reverend Jesse Jackson in a national moratorium on no-knock warrants. These warrants are egregious and dangerous, not just to the occupants of any dwelling, but to police officers and the public at large. Enough is enough, and now it's time for direct action. And we're on our way to the Jubilee celebration in Selma, Alabama, as we not only commemorate, but we organize and energize the base, walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday and the Selma to Montgomery March. You want to be a part of these movements, March 3rd to March 11th. Go to rainbowpush.org and join and get in the fastest growing social justice army in America. You know, the work of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson is broad and deep and fruitful as it relates to doing one thing: keeping hope alive. We'll see you then.
Good morning. I'm Todd Yeary, and this is Due Process. What's going on? Marvin Gaye's Justice Anthem provides the political frame for this week's conversation. Too much death, too much grieving, not enough action, and even outright resistance to the notions of justice. Threats of war abroad and outright combat in the neighborhoods of our cities where police are armed like they are in combat, and those they are to protect and serve are treated as enemy combatants with impunity. Protest met with punishment. What's going on? Well, let's talk about it. Outrage has returned to Minneapolis and its police department after the killing of Amir Locke by officers executing a no-knock search warrant at an apartment where Locke was staying. The search warrant did not name Locke as the subject of the warrant, and there are other factors that remain unclear in determining what the connection was between that apartment and the police investigation into a homicide with which there was no connection to Amir Locke. The search warrant request came from the adjoining jurisdiction of St. Paul. However, the warrant execution request was not for a no-knock entry. That was insisted upon by the Minneapolis Police Department per media reports. Amir Locke was a lawful gun owner and had no criminal history. The Locke case brings up the issues seen in Louisville, Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was killed in her home by police officers executing a no-knock search warrant. Taylor was killed after police entered her apartment looking for an ex-boyfriend who did not live there, and upon breaching the door of the apartment encountered Kenneth Walker, Breonna's boyfriend, who was also a lawful gun owner. Walker fired one shot in the direction of the break-in, and officers returned multiple shots, striking and killing Breonna Taylor in her own home. After Breonna's killing, the family and the city of Louisville settled a civil suit that included police reforms as a part of the settlement terms. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey has issued a moratorium on the use of no-knock warrants after Locke's death. However, there are exceptions in instances where there is a threat of imminent harm where the procedure might be approved. This moratorium comes after there had been a long-standing belief that no-knock warrants had already been banned by the MPD. In the aftermath of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Daunte Wright, and the many others who have died at the hands of law enforcement, it is clear that more must be done to ensure proper law enforcement engagement with Black residents. Rainbow Push Coalition will be a part of those efforts to ensure that the lack of action on the part of the U.S. Senate to move police reform, that it doesn't get interpreted as our willingness to just let this slide. Now let's talk about what's going on with voting rights and redistricting. Remember from civics class, Every 10 years, political boundaries called districts are redrawn after the taking of the decennial census. Because the number of state seats in the U.S. House of Representatives is determined by population, each state gets 2 senators, the census fight really fuels the political fights for political advantage when legislative maps are redrawn. Gerrymandering does not just have the effect of shifting dynamics of political parties, but it also has the effect of minimizing the power of the votes of Black people and other communities of color when voting for candidates of their choice. Of course, it was the Kerner Commission report that defined Black power as the ability to swing the outcome of an election. That having been proven in the 2020 elections in Georgia and across the nation, the fight has only intensified to mute the voting power of Black voters while frustrating their participation to the advantage of those who would undo the effects of the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. So, here's what's going on. On Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated an Alabama congressional map that a lower federal court had ruled diluted the voting power of Black voters to be able to elect their favorite candidate in violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The justices voted 5-4 to stay, basically halt, the lower court ruling that would have required Alabama to redraw the legislative maps to create a second majority Black district. Justice Brett Kavanaugh argued in his concurring opinion that states needed certainty in order to carry out the upcoming elections, and this ruling by the lower court came too close to the November election to be able to avoid election upheaval. Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the 3 liberal justices on the court and wrote in dissent that the lower court, quote, properly applied existing law in an extensive opinion with no apparent errors for our correction, end quote. It appears that the makeup of this current court is more concerned with convenience rather than justice. This fight will go beyond the upcoming midterm elections in November. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, the state Supreme Court held that the state's new maps for congressional and state legislative seats violated the state constitution. By a narrow 4-3 margin, the court directed the Republican-controlled legislature to redraw the map by February 18th, as well as provide an explanation about how they determined fairness in creating the new boundaries. With the primaries approaching in May, the configuration of the state's congressional seats will have a direct impact on the overall issue of who will control the House of Representatives after the midterm elections. The state Supreme Court in North Carolina overturned a lower state court panel's ruling in finding that the maps there violated several provisions in the North Carolina Constitution, including the right to free elections, freedom of speech, and equal protections of citizens, finding that the maps were, quote, a result of intentional pro-Republican partisan redistricting, end quote. However, the state's Chief Justice Paul Newby accused the majority of seizing the opportunity to advance its agenda. This case is more proof that the fight over political boundaries is inextricably bound to the continuing fight to protect the right to vote for Black, Indigenous peoples of color. All of this court fighting can be seen across the country. Georgia joins the litigation fight over legislative maps as a federal judge is hearing arguments about the redrawn map in that state. This week, William Cooper, a redistricting expert, told Judge Steve Jones that the state legislature missed a, quote, drop-dead obvious, end quote, opportunity to create a new majority Black congressional district based on population growth in the area. The current census has indicated that 500,000 new residents had moved to the state, creating enough new growth and density to draw a more favorable congressional district based on racial balance and makeup. Instead, parts of the metro area where Blacks live was split between 4 majority white districts in order to dilute the voting strength of Black voters. In other parts of the state, Blacks were packed into districts to over-concentrate voting strength to avoid creating more competitive legislative districts in other parts of the state. Kevin Hamilton, attorney for some of the plaintiffs, stated, "Make no mistake, this is a frontal assault to the Voting Rights Act." And while Gil Scott-Heron told us that the revolution would not be televised, the political insurrection and dismantling of American democracy is live and in color. All of this comes down to the Constitution and its expansion after the Union defeated the Confederacy in the Civil War. As a condition of rejoining the Union, the rebellion states in the South had to agree to the ratification of the Civil War amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Enslaved persons were treated as property, not people. They were counted as 3/5 of a person for determining representation in Congress and were not citizens, as Chief Justice Taney explained in the Dred Scott decision. Enslaved blacks had no rights nor any access to the courts to address any issue until after the Civil War and the passage of the Civil War amendments. The 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The 15th Amendment to the Constitution provides that the rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2 of the 15th Amendment provides that the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. The right to vote for women didn't occur until the passage of the 19th Amendment, and that amendment provides that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of sex. Congress also has enforcement power by way of legislation. It is important that we connect what we are seeing in the news from across the country, as over 250 bills in at least 27 states have been proposed this year alone to affect voting rights. Some of the bills would affect access to mail ballots, limit voter registration, require voter ID, and impose other limitations on access to the ballot. Why does this matter? It's math. After the Civil War, those who had been held as property were now legally recognized as citizens, and black men were given the right to vote. Women's right to the ballot box would not become the law of the land until 1920. We'll discuss that in more detail in coming episodes. But the sheer numbers of new politically empowered voters could have had devastating effects on the political entitlement and economic interest of white elites. The mere thought of losing power necessitated the creation of obstacles to the ballot box. The voter participation of blacks, particularly black women, over the past election cycles in the 21st century continues to cause great angst amongst those who feel politically threatened, much the same way as was seen after the Civil War when the 15th Amendment was ratified. We will talk more about voting laws and voting rights in upcoming editions of Due Process. But I raised it today because last week marked the 152nd anniversary of the ratification of the 15th Amendment. However, the work to protect the intent of the constitutional revision hangs in limbo as a hostile Supreme Court is enabled by an impotent Congress to pass meaningful voting rights reforms and protect the value of the vote amongst communities of color. We must fight the good fight of faith and justice to protect the citizens' right to vote freely and fairly. Join Reverend Jackson, myself, and the entire Rainbow Push Coalition team in one of the most important fights of our lifetimes, the fight for the ballot. Go to rainbowpush.org for more information, and remember, don't give up We must keep hope alive. That's what's going on in this week's Due Process. I'm Todd Yeary.
There is a time and a purpose and place for everything, and I do believe this is my time to step up and serve the people and help bring about change for our community from a position in government in Washington, D.C.
Jonathan Jackson turning upside down the race for Illinois' first congressional seat with word today that he is running to replace the retiring Bobby Rush.
I think that he rises immediately to the top of the heap because of his name recognition, because of his political base at Rainbow Push and through his father.
Jack and I are so grateful for Jonathan's commitment to public service as his life's work. Jonathan came from a long way. You know, I have a lot of children, sometimes some start at the sergeant gate running, others have a slow start. I'll never forget Jonathan was 2 years old, and so McSwain and Gwen came over to our house. Since Sandy and Jesse was up and moving around, and John was kind of quiet. And he was, somebody said, well, he's obedient. Miss McSwain said, no, he's sick. He had a cold fever, rushed him to Billings Hospital, and Jonathan had pneumonia. His whole left lung was out. And he nearly died at that time. This week, Dr. King came to Chicago and went and visited, embraced Jonathan and took a picture. That's the only picture I wish I had on this day, Jonathan. Dr. King embraced Jonathan in his arms while he had pneumonia. It's been a long journey.
Jackson said he was encouraged to run by the Reverend Al Sharpton and with the blessing of his father, who twice ran for president.
He's never been directly a candidate, but he's been involved in politics his entire life. Because when his father ran for president, the whole family were surrogate speakers for their father.
Jackson jumps into a crowded race that already has 16 declared candidates.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to run for Congress, and this is his home base. This is where he comes from. So it's probably a very attractive opportunity.
Go, Johnny, go.
We're excited to get more people involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in impacting public policies, if you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, you can become a policymaker by becoming a member of Rainbow Push right now. For an annual membership of $35, or if you're a student or senior, $15, you can help us make a difference in the lives of millions. How do you become a member? Visit our website at rainbowpush.org and press join. Or maybe you'd like to support us. You can text the word PUSH, that's PUSH, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give any amount you feel comfortable giving. You can also call us at 773-256-2775, or go to rainbowpush.org and push donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.